Welcome to Deloitte M&A Views, a Deloitte podcast series exploring the latest trends and topics in mergers and acquisitions. I'm Greg Jarrett. Today we discuss the current M&A climate in the life sciences and healthcare industry. We're joined by Phil Frang, partner with Deloitte & Touche LLP, and Susan Detmar, principal with Deloitte Consulting LLP. Phil, the sector's seen a lot of activity this past year. Do you see this activity increasing or decreasing in the current political climate, the climate in the U.S. and worldwide?
I think the question that people are asking is whether or not all of the disruption, political change that you're referring to is likely to decrease the level of M&A activity. Typically, uncertainty is something that tends to cool down M&A activity for all the obvious reasons. When you think about what we're hearing, what we're seeing, you have to break it into really two pieces. One is domestic M&A activity, and the second is cross-border M&A activity. And with respect to domestic M&A activity, we really don't see anything, and I think this is the consensus view, that would indicate that M&A activity is going to slow down. In fact, we believe that it will continue to be relatively robust, if not increase.
Susan, we're moving forward at light speed, some people say, as far as our advancement in technology and the internet within the healthcare system. They're converging, they're getting together. How is this going to affect M&A? Are some of the old line companies that do things a rather stodgy way going to absorb some of the younger companies, not only so that they can move forward more quickly and absorb some of that management style, but also because they need that technology? What's it going to do?
It's a great question. And I've actually seen a lot more of that collaborative thinking from the tech companies driving that discussion with traditional pharmaceutical and medical device companies. I do think, based on what I've seen, that our executive teams and business development groups in life sciences are thinking much more now about collaborations from their perspective. And so there's a lot of question in M&A around what value do both sides bring to the table. It's actually using medical things and figuring out how to combine that with digital and analytics in useful ways for patients, for payers, and for customers. So we are seeing a lot of that. I think a lot of it is nascent. There are companies that have set up venture funds and incubators, and I think those are really trying to break into a lot of different things at once. I think there's a lot of promise, and I see a lot of our clients, Deloitte's clients, really thinking about this. But most of our clients are, large pharmaceutical, very successful medical device companies, and for them, they don't want to make a lot of little plays, and they don't want to make 1,000 plays. So it's how do I pick the right things at the right time? And where I'm seeing them spend the most time these days is more alliances and joint ventures and collaborations than actually outright buying a technology. Because I don't think in many cases there's a definitive agreement which technology platform is going to be the winner. I see them sort of hedging their bets and thinking about, okay, well, how does my specific set of strategic priorities, therapy areas, technology platforms, physician groups, how does that line up with what I'm seeing in the marketplace? And how much am I willing to pay for that? I think that's a big question.
So I can paint a better picture for myself of what you're saying. I just read two different studies today. One of them says that by 2018, 30% of our interaction with the internet is going to be not on the keyboard, but by voice. And by 2020, 50%. So it's going to just grow exponentially. We're going to do away with the keyboard like we did away with cursive writing. Are you talking about taking a company that has a voice-activated connect with the internet and tying it up with a health service company and maybe a company that has 50,000 employees? So one of the employees can speak into the device and say, I have a fever of 103, and the device comes back and says, have you recently been to Nigeria? Go to the emergency room right now. Is this the sort of thing we're talking about?
I mean, that's one area, and actually I think video is going to be even more compelling. I'm very surprised how long it's taking for physicians to be able to conduct differential diagnosis and screening via Skype. And I know that that's happening more in the psychology realm, but it could happen much more so in the rest of the care areas where wound care, for example, is a perfect, I think, opportunity for patients and physicians to get together virtually. And I know there's a lot of investment that's already been made by the military to get care delivered as close to the front as possible, but have the doctors be as far away from the front as possible. That's been going on for years and years and years now. I've been really surprised and disappointed that sort of groundbreaking innovation hasn't made it to the regular patients in the US yet. And I do think that there's going to be a tipping point. Maybe it's enough companies investing in voice and video, and I think really having a push in the regulatory and compliance field that allows that to happen and allows for reimbursement.
And we've already seen the major Silicon Valley giants absorbing smaller companies that do these kinds of things. Do you see more of this sort of, if not a joint venture, then just a full-on absorption of a different company, takeover of a company taking place? Do you see a lot more of this as we move forward? The companies with money?
I don't think the big life sciences companies are going to make big bets in high tech in that way. I don't think they're going to acquire. I don't think they need to. I think what the pharmas and medical devices companies that I work with are in danger of is getting leapfrogged over. And I see major technology companies, the Frightful Five, the ones that you usually think about, coming up with really genius ideas that are really taking their technology into healthcare and using the consumer to get them there. And I don't see the life sciences and med tech companies sort of trying to encroach in the technology space nearly as aggressively. I do think that they could do that by licensing and partnering, and some of them already have, right? There are some really interesting combinations that are already happening. But if you look at even older sectors like automotive, I think they're doing more to get, the car to be a healthcare opportunity, right? Like there's this whole world that you live in when you're sitting in your car, and you've got a display panel. You've got, it's all wired, right? You're on the internet in your car. You've got, personalized settings for how you're driving. You've got monitors and cameras. And so the auto industry is thinking about how do they pull technology more and more into that automotive experience. And they're also thinking about healthcare. I'm not sure a healthcare company has any business buying into the other sectors, but I do think they need to be much more aware of how many other sectors are really creatively considering healthcare as their next adjacent growth opportunity.
Phil, there have been some discussions about opportunities within pharma, big pharma, and the absorption of those tech, pharmaceutical, biologics companies, and so on. Do you see a continuing opportunity there in this new environment?
Well, I'll say two things. One, we are living in an incredibly exciting time in terms of science. And I've heard some of our leading scientists who I think understand the science behind pharmaceuticals and biologics extremely well say things like, cure for cancer, or at least certain types of cancer, is within our grasp, is likely to occur within our lifetimes. Some of the advances that are being made around diagnostics, genetic diagnostics, where we really didn't know whether medicines would work. In fact, there are instances where medicines only work 50% of the time, depending on what your genetic makeup is. Prior to breakthroughs in genetic technology and diagnostics, we had no way of figuring out whether you were one of the two people that was going to respond. But we wrote you the prescription for that drug and took a 50-50 shot. Well, that's really kind of an interesting way to practice or to treat people. So there are just tremendously exciting breakthroughs that are occurring, and that is giving rise to all kinds of new and emerging business models. And some of those companies that are able to do those diagnostic things and improve the effectiveness with which we treat our population are really going to do extremely well and add value and get compensated for it. The broader pharmaceutical industry and the less innovative side of the industry is likely in for some headwinds. And we're the only country in the world that doesn't really have highly regulated drug pricing. We subsidize the research and development for the rest of the world through the higher prices that we pay for our drugs in this country. I think that may be coming to a close. I certainly think you're going to see some form of pricing reform, which I think is going to be a headwind for pharmaceuticals.
I'm Greg Jarrett. Thanks for listening to Deloitte M&A Views, sponsored by Deloitte's M&A Institute. We release new podcasts regularly, and if you subscribe, you won't miss a single one. To stay connected and receive more information on Deloitte's M&A service offerings, visit www.deloitte.com/us/MA subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Deloitte M&A. Until next time.